Chiang Kai-shek, the discredited, defeated loser of the Civil War, goes to this little island. The Chinese think that's their territory, which it is. And that it's their issue to work out, that the United States would decide that this is, that is sheer.
天的，咱们不聊那些弯弯绕的外交辞令，来聊一个能让美国政客当场破防，让咱们自己人听了直呼通透的顶级逻辑。大家想过没有，如果当年美国内战打输了的南方总统杰斐逊·戴维斯带着残部逃到了纽约旁边的斯塔滕岛，然后在那宣布我才是全美国的唯一合法代表，这时候要是有一个外国强权跳出来，又给那座小岛送武器，又派军舰去保护，还口口声声说这是为了民主与自由，你们猜华盛顿的历届总统会怎么想？他们会觉得这是正义吗？不，他们只会觉得这特么是在扯淡。这个生动到有点缺德的比喻可不是我瞎编的，它出自美国最顶尖的马克思主义经济学家理查德·沃尔夫教授之口。沃尔夫教授最近在接受访谈时，不仅把毛主席对人类文明的贡献拔高到了世界级伟人的高度，更是一针见血地戳穿了美国在台湾问题上那个最虚伪、最无耻的逻辑漏洞。为什么连哈佛、耶鲁的高材生对这段历史都一无所知？为什么美国精英阶层在台海问题上一直装睡？请看什么叫来自美国明白人的降维打击。
See Mao ranking among the Marxists and what his contributions were and legacy is.
Oh, that's a hard one. Well, he's certainly among the important people. More, I don't mean to be unfair to him, but more because of his role. He brings sophisticated Marxism to China. I mean, you don't have to say anything else. That makes you a world historical figure of the greatest. I mean, it's stupefyingly important what he did. Number one. Number two, his political decision has shaped the world in a way not like Gramsci. Gramsci's got this corpus of work on analyzing culture. Mao didn't do anything like that, not that I'm aware of. But Mao said to the Marxian tradition, of which he had become a part, that your focus on the factory, on industry, as the crucial place to organize is a mistake. It took unbelievable courage. I said, and now, as if I were Mao, it is a mistake not to understand that the rural, agricultural peasant of the world can be an equivalently revolutionary force. In Western Europe, where Marxism is born, the most reactionary part of the society were the rural, uneducated, often illiterate, religiously dragged down. And so the chances to organize revolution there were hopeless. And revolutionaries who were themselves typically urban, relatively educated, relatively, they went to work on the workers that were close to them, that they understood, from which they themselves came, the urban, industrial, and you had this split. Mao is absolutely staggeringly important because he brings the notion of Marxism and Marxist revolutionary anti-capitalist mentality to rural areas who didn't have any capital. For them, they were just beginning to deal with capitalism, and they already had this enormous push against it, which makes the evolution of places like India and China radically different from the West, where the split of agriculture and industry. I mean, Mr. Trump's base is rural, is suburban, is not, the big cities of this country are where Mr. Trump has got a lot of problems, right? That's our culture. That's not the way it is in the East. And Mao is as much responsible for that as anybody, probably more so. So that innovation opened up Marxism to become revolutionary for what is the majority of the working class of this world, which is rural, was rural, still is rural and agricultural. And so now, India has 4 communist parties. China is ruled by a communist party. Vietnam is ruled. That Mao breaks all that open. and makes that a force in the world. And if I had time, I would make you the argument that what that achieved is the foundation for the Chinese economic development post-World War II. And that means that Mao is responsible in a major way for the ability of China to be a superpower challenging the United States right now. If you deal with Mao in this country, they have no idea who you're talking. I mean, the lack of an understanding of just a simple story I just told you in this country is stupefying. It's like, I don't know how to make an equivalent. It's like if that fellow over there who's working with us wanted to light a cigarette, but didn't know how to do it. And I said, here's a lighter. He would be stunned. Look at that, a thing with the fire. Whoa. And you'd feel for him. Oh, my God, you're out of touch. We've had these lighters over 50 years. No, Mao is a bad person in China. End of conversation. And I'm talking about educated people like those at Harvard and Yale.
My Chinese teacher who's in China told me that they all really look up to him.
Yeah, for God's sake, yes. Doesn't mean you can't disagree with this or that or this policy or his capacity of swimming up the Yangtze River and all the other funny stuff about him. He had that. They all do. But if the man is too, Jesus Christ, what he accomplished. I would say this to you, that the pamphlets he wrote, you know, the history of the Long March when they're driven out of the South, driven out of Shanghai. The early days of the Chinese Communist Party were in the cities, as was Marxism focused. And Mao was a young, middle-level income family kid. And he's organizing in Shanghai, in the south of China, in the urban, with a focus on the industrial. And the government of China at the time, a nationalist government, under the heading of a man who became famous later, Chiang Kai-shek, the leader, hates the communists. He is the expression of the emerging Chinese capitalist class, the entrepreneurs. Remember, China in the early 20th century is what we're talking about. This is 1920, in around there, 25. It's just coming out from being a semi-colony. It was never a colony in the sense that Britain owned China the way Britain owned India. That never happened. But along the coast of China, the cities that were interesting ports were snatched by European countries. So you can think of it as China had portions of itself taken over. Hong Kong by the British. There were Portuguese, there were Spanish, there were French. It was horrible. And the Europeans got together and defeated the old Chinese government in something called the Boxer Rebellion right at the beginning of the 20th century. So China was, as they now say, going through its 100 years of humiliation. That's how it's called in China. And here were some communists who were upset about it. They probably, I don't remember the detail, but certainly from a good number of them, they had left China to become students in Western Europe. They didn't come to the United States in those days. If you were a young, aspiring, middle-classy kid in China in the 20s, you went to Germany, France, probably maybe England. I don't know. I know the ones about Germany. Chiang Kai-shek murders a whole bunch of them, sends the troops. They're having a meeting of their little, very small communist party at that time in Shanghai. I'm pretty sure it's Shanghai, and murders a lot of them. But a bunch of them escape. And they then go on a long trek, pursued by Chiang Kai-shek's military, to escape. And they go deep into the interior. And that is called the Long March. If you read any history of China, there will be a chapter in the book on the Long March. Because it was in that period, it took a long time. I mean, I don't know, maybe years. I mean, the Yunnan into the deep interior of China. It's like, I don't know, if Americans had gone at some early point in the 19th century to the wilderness of northern Minnesota or something like that, just far away. And they settled among peasants in this province. and they organized the peasants against their own landlords, built a base, and that saved them from the army of Chiang Kai-shek. And there they built an alternative system, society, putting many of their principles into effect, but also, not being stupid, built an army. It's very famous in China. It's called I don't know the reason why, but it had the funny name, Eighth Root, 8 as in the number, Eighth Root Army. The people, the Red Army, the Eighth Army. Then the Japanese invade China in 1931. Then there's a war between China and Japan. And Chiang Kai-shek now has to stop pursuing the communists because he can't. I mean, they're too strong now in this distant province. Fights the war with the Japanese in alliance with Mao, who's now the leader in this Yunnan. And as soon as the war is over, the Japanese are defeated. They turn on each other, and they have the Chinese Civil War, which goes from 45 to 49. Mao wins. Chiang Kai-shek loses, leaves China for the island of Taiwan with his people, which is why Taiwan is
really
weird. Yeah, that's how that happened.
That's the root of that.
That's all that's about. And if you want to know why the Chinese would be angry, they won a civil war. They worked together to defeat the Japanese, which they did. Chiang Kai-shek, the discredited, defeated loser of the Civil War, goes to this little island. It's like Jefferson Davis had gone to, I don't know, Staten Island and set up shop. The Chinese think that's their territory, which it is. And that it's their issue to work out, that the United States would decide that this is, that is sheer cuckoo. And you couldn't possibly tell that story to the American people because it would have the effect it's having on you, which is, I didn't realize this.
蒋介石这个战败者败逃到小岛上，好比美国内战的南方总统逃到了斯塔滕岛。听完沃尔夫教授的这段复盘，阿新在茶水间里真的是感到一种大道至简的畅快。大家发现没有？很多时候我们费尽心思跟西方解释台湾问题的复杂性，效果往往不好。为什么？因为他们不仅被困在信息茧房里，更重要的是，他们的政客在故意装睡。沃尔夫教授提到的那个打火机的比喻太妙了。当那些哈佛、耶鲁的高知人群听说了真实的中国近代史，听说了100年前中国山河破碎、列强瓜分的惨状时，他们的反应竟然是震惊。这说明什么？这说明美国那套庞大的媒体和教育机器，在过去几十年里，刻意地把中国真实的血泪史和奋斗史给物理抹除了。他们只让民众看到现在的冲突，却绝口不提过去的原因。他们不敢告诉美国民众，现在的中国政府是靠着那场艰苦卓绝的长征，靠着扎根在广袤农村的亿万农民，靠着无数革命烈士的鲜血，才把中国从100年国耻的深渊里拉出来的。他们更不敢告诉民众，所谓的台湾问题根本不是什么民主对抗威权的政治戏码，而是一场尚未完成的解放战争的延续，是一个在全中国人民支持下诞生的新政权，在清算一个被民意抛弃、逃往孤岛的残余势力。沃尔夫教授说，美国非要多管闲事，扯淡。这话虽然糙，但它是真正的公理。美国之所以在台海问题上疯狂试探，不是因为他们不懂历史，恰恰是因为他们太懂了。他们知道，一旦台湾回归，中国将彻底打破第一岛链的锁链，一个真正能与美国平起平坐的超级大国将再无束缚。所以，他们必须让民众保持无知，必须给这场领土主权的完整之战贴上各种莫名其妙的普世价值标签。阿新今天分享这段视频，是想告诉大家，当正义和逻辑站在我们这一边时，连对手内部最清醒的那批头脑都会成为我们的嘴替。中国崛起从来不是靠偷，也不是靠抢，而是靠像沃尔夫所说的那种超乎寻常的胆识，走出了属于自己的路。我们不需要西方的恩赐来证明台湾是我们的，但看这些西方学者的反思，能让我们更加确信，历史的潮流从来不会因为几个政客的装模作样而改变。斯塔滕岛永远是美国的一部分，台湾也永远是中国的一部分。这个道理，美国人终究会像接受死亡和纳税一样，被迫去接受它。好了，今天茶水间的硬核复盘就到这里。你觉得沃尔夫教授那个斯塔滕岛的比喻够不够犀利？欢迎在评论区留下你的看法。别忘了点赞、订阅阿新的茶水间，让我们在这个风云变幻的时代，守住那份清醒的底气。下期再见。